Hello and greetings. Thank you for joining today's Decision webinar. My name is Dar Gruskovich, and I lead marketing at Decisions, and I'm going to be playing the role of your host. Today's topic, as you can see, is Analyst Insights on a Major Shift in Automation Strategy. I am pleased today to be joined by two of our guests or panelists to lead the conversation. The first is Giles Whitting, the CEO of Decisions. And the second is Jonty Padia, the practice director of data automation and AI for the Everest Group. The structure of the conversation today will be first, Jonty will open up with research and insights from the Everest Group. Then Giles will discuss a strategic announcement and the implications for you. And lastly, we'll close with a fireside chat. Keep in mind, as it says there, that you can post questions throughout the entire conversation directly in the Zoom chat, and we will get to your questions at the end. And without further ado, let me pass the baton and pass it over to Jonty.
Thanks, Dad. Before we dive into the trends, right, we just a quick introduction to Everest Group for those who may not be familiar with us. So we are a global research and advisory firm founded in 1991. We partner with some of the largest enterprises, helping them make confident data-backed decisions on technology, sourcing, and operations. Over the last 5 years, we have conducted more than 5,000 research engagements, serving 8 of the 12 largest global companies. And our focus is on helping organizations navigate disruption with clarity, whether it's automation, AI, or any evolving landscape. Moving to the next slide. Just before that, and by the way of introduction, I am Jonty Padia. I'm a practice director with Everest Data Automation and AI practice, and I lead the research within our agentic and process automation program, which focuses on emerging technologies, such as process orchestration and document processing, agentic AI. And in my role, I work closely with enterprise automation leaders, tech providers, investors to decode how these technologies are reshaping the current operating models. With that context, let's turn to today's topic, Analyst Insights on a Major Shift in Automation Strategy. And we'll look at how automation is moving from rule-based execution to intelligence-driven orchestration, and what this means for enterprises in 2025 and beyond. If we look at enterprise priorities in 2025, one theme that stands out clearly is technology. Technology has become the central lever for achieving business outcomes. Our latest Everest Group survey shows technology adoption and innovation remaining as a top priority for 2 consecutive years. This tells us that organizations no longer see technology as an enabler, but as a strategic differentiator. We're also seeing a growing focus on process optimization and operational efficiency, which has in fact moved up from third to second place, signaling a shift from transformation for innovation's sake to measurable impact. And data analytics follows closely, right? Reinforcing that insight driven decision making continues to power these initiatives. So the message here is very clear. As organizations deal with uncertainty, efficiency pressures, and competitive disruption, they are doubling down on technology led reinvention. Moving to the next slide. And when we dig into IT spending priorities, the data shows a decisive shift. AI is now the number one focus area for 2025, rising from third place last year. This reflects not just experimentation, but a move into scaled deployment. Cybersecurity and cloud remain foundational. However, automation and analytics are gaining more attention as enablers of efficiency and intelligence. What's interesting is how these elements are also converging. Enterprises aren't treating them as separate initiatives anymore. So the biggest insight here is, AI is not displacing automation, it's augmenting it. And we are entering an era of AI infused slash AI embedded automation where orchestration, decisioning, intelligence come together in a unified tech stack. Moving to the next slide. So this is a view of our intelligent automation tech stack or tech ecosystem. When we look at within the intelligent automation ecosystem, process orchestration sits at the core. It connects the dots, between process discovery, AI-led automation, and rules-based automation. As enterprises scale digital workers and AI agents alongside the human teams, human workers, orchestration ensures everything runs in unison, everything runs in tandem across people, across systems, and across technologies. It's also evolving very rapidly. So, from traditional BPM driven coordination to platforms that support hybrid workforce management, dynamic business rules execution, and seamless UI UX experience. With that, we'll talk more about the evolution in the next slide. Yeah, so here we can see process orchestration has been evolving across four clear stages. And we will go through each of these stages one by one. When we look at the stage number one, right, it is traditional process orchestration, which is more linear, rules based, logic built on BPM and platform, and more prone to pro code models. When we look at the second stage, we have modern process orchestration, which is low code orchestration with conditioning branching, limited AI at some of the decision points. Now, this is where things get interesting when we look at the stage number three, which is about agentic process orchestration, which is goal oriented planning using AI agents that can reason, that can coordinate, that can adapt more dynamically. And when we look at the fourth stage here is the autonomous orchestration, self-learning, self-healing, multi-agent ecosystem operating with very minimal human input. Now the shift from if then rules to goal-based orchestration is transformative. Instead of dictating how to reach an outcome, enterprises are now defining what the outcome should be, and the system figures out how to achieve those using, let's say, agents, APIs, and automations in near real time. So the early pilots, in enterprise landscape show huge potential. At least 20 to 40% cycle time reduction in dynamic workflows and meaningful gains in exceptional handling speed. But it also introduces to some set of new challenges for us, and the challenges are around governance, transparency, alignment with the correct business intent. So with that, I'll move to the next slide where we talk about agentic automation value chain. So like discussed earlier, right, process orchestration was a central core of broader intelligent automation ecosystem or tech stack. Similarly, this slide breaks down where agentic orchestration fits in across the agentic automation value chain. And we have broken down into three stages. Stage one is design, stage two is run, and stage three is monitor. And the black box section illustrates the orchestration layers specific contributions. Let's go by each of these phase one by one. When we look at stage number one, which is like design phase, right? So it talks about helping identify and prioritize some of the use cases which are suited for agentic automation. It also helps enterprise users configure data pipelines and establish the security guardrails for ingestion, for classification, and things like that. We also talk about a module called, model fine tuning, testing, and deployment, where enterprises can play around the model, fine tune them based on their use case, test, simulate, and optimize the model, and finally deploy them to the correct use cases. The last but not the least is the agentic orchestration framework design, which plays a very core role in the design phase. It integrates the pre-built or any custom agents, connect APIs and plugins, and reinforces and enforce access control policies across the workflow lifecycle. With that, we can talk about the second phase, which is the run phase. Run phase is driven by the perception, cognition, action cycle. I'm sure we must have heard about perception, cognition, action in multiple places. In the rise of agentic AI era. So when we talk about perception, what we mean is receiving real time input and context. So processing data in real time, understanding the context in real time. When we talk about cognition, we talk about predicting next best actions and selecting the appropriate agent or tools for that. So identifying the suitable agent, tools, or even humans to carry out that predicted action. When we talk about action, action is the layer which executes, as the name suggests, executes while enabling human in the loop validation, exceptional handling, even when the confidence is low. So enabling the human in the loop action or validation or exception handling is core to the action layer within the run phase. Moving to the third and the final phase here is the monitor phase. Monitor phase enables observability by logging every decision performance metric. It facilitates learning loop through, let's say, things like real world feedback, enabling continuous training, fine tuning, and it enforces AI governance protocols. When we talk about AI governance protocols, and I'll talk about AI governance in more detail in a bit, we talk about things like fairness, explainability, compliance. So, agentic orchestration isn't a standalone layer, it's the coordination fabric ensuring that design, execution, and governance work together in a continuous improvement loop. With that, I will move to our next slide, where we'll focus more around a very important subject called AI governance. So scaling agentic orchestration solution starts with a strong AI governance layer. As orchestration becomes more intelligent, governance becomes more foundational. Agentic systems make autonomous decisions. So things like explainability, accountability, and fairness must be embedded right from day one. So I'll talk about a framework. I'll talk about the AI governance value chain and talk about six important pillars of this value chain. We'll start with the first one, which is explainability and transparency. This layer is very critical to ensure model interpretability, traceability, and all the things to do with explainable AI. When we talk about the second pillar, it's about accountability and responsibility. So this layer talks about enforcing human oversight, ethical AI policies, compliance reinforcement, impact assessments, and things like that. The third one here is safety and security. It's more about cybersecurity measures, risk and safety testing of AI agents. The next one is privacy and data governance, where we have stuff around anonymization, encryption, consent management. I think it is again a very important one with AI agent being on rise. Then we have fairness and inclusiveness. Talking about bias mitigation, stakeholder equity, and things like that. And last but not the least is the robustness and reproductivity, ensuring reliable, scalable, fault tolerant performance. Together, these pillars allow enterprises to scale automation responsibly and also maintain stakeholder trust. Moving on to the next slide. So when we have discussed so much about technology, process orchestration, agentic orchestration, different phases, and AI governance, I also wanted to talk a bit about how can organizations actually begin. What would be some best practices which would be crucial for moving from POC to scale, right? So we'll talk about a 6-step framework, and we'll start with the step number one, which is start with high value, low risk use cases. So as the name suggests, identify the processes with very clear metrics, limited dependencies on external data. For example, it can be as simple as invoice exception resolution, right? Then I think what we need to do is build a business case to secure the enterprise buy. So quantifying benefits in terms of, let's say, cycle time, accuracy, FT savings, all of these are important, but also highlight some of the strategic outcomes which are important and coming out as a part of your AI and automation initiatives, such as agility, customer experience, employee experience. I think after that, we can move to a very important layer, which we discuss is establishing strong AI governance early. So, we don't retrofit guardrails later, you know, design them into the data pipeline, into the agent behavior, and oversight the dashboards and do a constant monitoring. The next step here is ensuring the data quality and accessibility. So, if I have to talk about some of the top challenges which, let's say, enterprises have faced while scaling their automation initiative, data quality and accessibility has been one of the top ones. So, agentic orchestration thrives on context. Fragmented or ungoverned data quickly limits its effectiveness. So it's very, very important to ensure, the good amount of data quality and accessibility. The next in line is train and upskill employees. So hybrid collaboration between, let's say, humans and agents demand new skills. So from prompt design to AI supervision, we have seen a lot of new roles which have come up with rise of Gen AI and agentic AI, as simple as a orchestrator and a prompt engineer. And the last step towards this is foster cross-functional collaboration and change management. I think this step would be true for any technology out there. Involve your IT, operations, risk, and business users from the start. Without and shared ownership, orchestration just becomes siloed automation. So organizations that combine these levers are more likely to scale AI-driven orchestration beyond pilots based on some of our research. So to wrap up, right, process orchestration has matured from coordinating activities to orchestrating intelligence. The next wave, which is agentic orchestration, represents a pivotal shift where autonomous, context-aware agents uh, coordinate outcomes across the enterprise. But technology alone won't get us there. It will require trusted governance, skilled people, and clear business intent. So the organizations that balance the innovation with responsibility will be the ones to lead in this new era of intelligent automation. That wraps up the analyst perspective. Now I'll pass it to Giles Whiting, the CEO of Decisions, who will take us through some of the important updates and a very exciting strategic announcement from Decisions. Over to you, Giles.
Thank you, Jonty. And Jonty, we didn't have the chance to hear each other's presentations beforehand. But what I would say is, one, thank you for sharing that, and two, I'm very glad that we are very aligned, right? We're on the same page with how we see this space. As Jonty said, my name is Giles. I'm really excited that I can be with everyone here today. I'm the CEO of Decisions, and we have some exciting announcements that we're going to share. I wanted to start with this, though, because this sets a little bit of the backdrop of why we're here and why have we done some of the things and made the investments that I'm going to share with you in a few slides. So the first is this assessment was back in 2024. Jonty, where you named us as a major contender. And I think what you're going to here is we've been doing a lot since 2024. And so we're excited that, consistent with everything you just showed, you're thinking on how businesses can use companies like us to orchestrate AI, to ensure that governance, and to move through those 6 phases that you just went through. I think as we help businesses do that, we are also excited to be moving up and to the right on this chart. If we can go to the next slide. The announcement that I want to share is that on Monday, and hopefully many of you saw this, we announced the merger between Decisions and Process Makers. These are 2 strong companies that are helping businesses do just what you shared, Jonty, of orchestrating, automating, and governing that interplay between humans, systems, and AI, and of course, agents as a part of that. You can go to the next slide. This slide is the very basics. At a high level, this is a combined company with over 700 customers across 6 continents, with 400 employees and a presence on every one of those continents as well. And we've been in this space for a long time. Process Maker was founded back in 2000, Decisions in 2010, and both companies are here to create the future of automation and AI orchestration. We're uniting Process Maker's strengths in core workflow automation. It's low code, low development. They have complementary tools like task mining and intelligent process document processing. With Decisions enterprise-grade rule engine, our agentic and process orchestration. We have case management, process mining, and lots of integration capabilities. And ultimately, and when you get to the product roadmap that I'll take you through, we are investing a lot in helping businesses use AI, and as they're using AI and our solutions, also increase the time to value that they have in realizing the benefits of AI. And I'll just read the first line here of this quote, but again, we're very aligned. This is a huge market and it's only getting bigger. And this came from your team, Jonty. Process orchestration has evolved into a strategic backbone for enterprise automation, enabling organizations to design, govern, and optimize complex business processes that span humans, digital workers, and AI agents. We are extremely aligned. I think we're saying the same thing in a few different ways here. But let me back up and paint a little bit of the picture of where we came from, because I think where we're going is way more exciting. And if you think back to, hopefully many of you on this webinar are of sufficient age to remember this. I was thinking back to Windows 3.1. I actually couldn't even find a logo for Windows 3.1. I only found a logo for Windows NT, which, for those of you that remember, that was a huge jump. And these systems back then were all about, quote unquote, the end of paperwork. And at one point in the Process Maker's history, that was actually kind of their rallying call, is we're the end of paperwork. And it was about automating document processing. It was about doing calculations in Excel instead of a paper ledger. And this was all about individual productivity. It was, how do we make the individual more productive? Like me, myself, I don't have to fax things anymore. I can dial up my Netscape browser and send a fax digitally instead of through the dedicated fax machine. I can do my calculations much more efficiently by using formulas in Excel rather than in the calculator where there's manual error. So this was an era of just individual productivity by having that individual work with machines and having machines help that individual more. Then we got to this next phase, which I think was a lot more about collaboration and integration. And that kind of took us from 2010 to where we are today. And I was interested, Jonty, in the 4 phases that you showed, because I think you're absolutely right, which is we're right in the middle there, on the cusp of doing really interesting things with AI. And so this middle period was in many ways more about the individuals kind of doing things together, but through machines. And I say that's automation between people and systems. And I think a great example of that is Amazon. So Amazon, as many of y'all remember, started out as just a bookseller. And its whole idea was you can buy a book, any book in the world, and in just a few days, it's going to be on your doorstep. And so how would you do that? Well, me as a customer, I had to go onto a website, which was great because now I have the internet and I have a computer, and I can actually buy something in a website. I don't have to go to a store, right? So that's me interacting with the machine in the front end. And then on Amazon's side, they've got systems that are saying, I've gotten this order, I'm going to now process this order, and I'm going to orchestrate everything from that order processing to the inventory management to know that that book's available, where it is in the warehouse, and logistics to ultimately get it on my door. So it's me and that business that are trying to do something, and we're doing it faster and more effectively through machines, which obviously creates a lot of integration requirements as well. This next phase, I'm calling 4 dimensions of gains, and it's gains between humans and agents. And you can think about this as humans being more productive and gaining efficiency and scale and just being able to do more by using AI to help them. You can think of humans using AI to do more for other humans, so the increased productivity, just humans to humans, and then humans to agents. And of course, where we all know this is going is agents actually working together. So there's 4 interesting dimensions here that we're going to see gains from that are quite different in terms of potential impact, much more significant than what we've seen in these first 2. But what this requires is that orchestration between systems, people, and those agents themselves. And as the world gets more and more complex, that's when that orchestration is going to become more and more important. And so you can't automate everything unless it's well orchestrated. And that complexity means that the value and the criticality of that orchestration is just going to be way up. Many of you probably listen to the same tech podcast I do. There was an interesting one 2 weeks ago where Elon Musk was talking about Tesla's self-driving car. And he said, the problem is we're running into situations where, the car will see a parking spot, for instance, and it will say, oh, there's an empty parking spot. But what it's not doing is saying, there's only 3 inches on each side. So actually the passenger can't get in or out. The passengers on the other cars can't get in or out, but it's just saying there's a parking spot. And I know what we're all thinking, which is, oh, like maybe the passenger can get out before the car pulls in, or the car can pull out before the passenger gets in, et cetera. But these are all the complex edge cases that we are going to have to think about and that have to be orchestrated. And the ability to do this orchestration is fantastic and has tons of potential. But it just means that the work of actually doing it and doing it in a way where it is true governance, where you're actually governing what the AI is doing, is really important. So if you can go to the next slide, that is exactly what this combination is here to do. And this line was written before I had read that quote from Everest Group, but I think it is in some ways no coincidence that the thinking is very similar here, which is what you're able to do with solutions like Process Maker and Decisions ultimately creates that backbone of AI. And that is end-to-end AI and enterprise technology, process orchestration, automation, and even discovery, which is really exciting. Where we work as Decisions and Process Maker are across all of these businesses, and especially those that have these legacy ERP systems, and that's banking, insurance, healthcare, manufacturing, education. And every one of the companies and organizations that are working in these spaces have these huge pressures to consolidate systems, to reduce costs, and to go through what everyone says, oh, we're going to go through a digital transformation. Way harder than just the strategic plan of digital transformation. So what we're able to do is actually unify and govern all those systems and connect those systems to modern technology, our solutions, and importantly, ingest AI in the right places. So when you're thinking about how do you bring AI into your companies, when you're thinking about how do you work with multiple models, how do you design a model yourself, and how do you actually get it to do something, our perspective is what you want to do is make sure that that AI is working at the right place in a process with the right data, with the right structure, at the right time, and with the right next steps. So using a platform like Decisions and Process Maker is what allows you to do that. And the reason why we're so excited about this merger is these two solutions are incredibly complementary. Process Maker historically is focused on that more commercial workflow automation. Think about sort of approval routings and things like that, with Decisions being that enterprise grade rule engine business application, really some of the cornerstones of what businesses are doing. And I'll share a couple of examples. But ultimately, what we're doing with companies aren't things that have any room for error. And I'll give an example just from my personal life. My wife runs a small business of her own, and we were doing some planning and looked at a year in review. And I asked Google Gemini to go and look at my wife's Google Calendar. So this is Google's Gemini agent, asking it to go look at my wife's Google Calendar, which it is connected to and has access to, and just to catalog all of her business trips over the last year. And it did a terrible job, right? It missed so many of the trips, and it got dates wrong, it got locations wrong, and it missed more than 50%. What we're doing with businesses, you don't have room for error, and certainly not sort of 50% room for error. And so when we're looking at when AI works and how we're able to make AI work, we have three things that we're constantly obsessed with. And that is assurance, which is this auditable? Can I be sure that what I wanted to happen happened? Can I trace it back and actually audit what happened and do that over and over and over again? The second is governance, which is even if I can trace things back, can I change things and be sure that those changes are going to be in effect and permanent when I run this process again, or when I run these rules again? So can I be sure of what happened? Can I change what happened based on new information or based on desires to make those changes? And ultimately, if you can do those things and you can do them at scale with confidence, that's when you have trust. And that's what we're doing for businesses. Deploying AI, orchestrating AI, but in a way where you trust what it's doing because it's acting at that right time with the right data, followed by the right next steps. So let me just share a couple of examples. You go to the next slide. So one of the companies that we're working with is a top 5 global insurance company. Everyone would know who this is if I said the name. And we are its rules engine to automate and optimize leads, right? They get about $365 billion worth of leads in every year. We're routing about $4 million 4 million leads per quarter. And these are coming in real time from lots of different sources. You imagine an insurance company, you've got this traditional sort of retail business where people are maybe going online, or people are seeing an advertisement and calling a phone number. And then of course, on commercial sides, you've got insurance brokers, you've got commercial agents out there. So we're taking leads from all over the place, integrating with systems that help provide new data to those leads so they can qualify them. So we're supplementing the lead and then applying a lot of business logic to make sure that that lead gets to the right place and gets the right priority. And of course, with insurance, it's highly regulated. So you can't be casual about the level of integrity here, but things like state, line of business, understanding the customer behaviors, because what you want, of course, anyone who works in business is that dynamic prioritization of how valuable is this lead, and is it being routed, the right place at the right time, and are we able to follow up on it? So the way we do this, of course, is lots of different connections throughout this business. but very bespoke sets of rules, both by kind of product, but also by line of business, but with enough consistency that everyone knows essentially how the machine is working. And then the machine is always running. And the interesting thing here is that dynamic prioritization that allows a rapid response. And so anyone who's interested in growing revenue, right, you got to be able to understand where the lead came from, why that lead's important, the potential value, and you want to act on the most valuable leads quickly. If we can go to the next slide. Another example, totally different type of company, but it's an industrial manufacturer. And this company makes just really big things. I mean, things that cost billions and billions of dollars and have lifespans of decades. And so we're working side by side with SAP, and we do a lot of work with SAP because of the types of companies that we serve. And what we're doing with this company is helping them understand the life cycle and the maintenance for some of the things that they produce. And as you can imagine, really big machines that have decades-long life cycle, sometimes things break. And so the uptime and the readiness of these machines is incredibly important. And so even when things break, what we are helping them do is understand how fast can you get a part? How many of those parts should you have in supply so that you can rapidly repair something and get something back online? And of course, a lot of these things are in hard to get to places, right? And so supply chain, not only complicated by just where these things are being operated, but also by the changes of the suppliers. And so understanding when do we need to reboost inventory or think about bringing on new providers that are subs to help make sure that the supply chain for the end customer is always there. And of course, doing this well not only impacts the end customer because this manufacturer can serve them and they have a great experience with them and continue to work with them, but it also just keeps costs down, because the more proactive you can be, the more data driven you can be, is going to keep costs down for everyone. Next slide. One more example, and actually two more examples, but a bit different. First example, this is a multinational bank across Europe, Asia, and Africa, and now that is expanding into the US. When they were first going through the early stages of this expansion, what they kept running into are a number of issues that just were complicating the rate that they could expand at. So they want to grow, they have opportunity to grow, but they're running into issues of regulatory compliance, of hiring employees to do all the things that need to be done as you're expanding a retail and commercial bank, and hiring them fast enough and training them on processes. And so we said, well, what if we can help you automate a lot of those processes so that one, this process automation can help accelerate your growth. Two, you're less reliant on the timing to hire employees, the training of employees, et cetera. And so, and lastly, you can make sure that the processes that you are automating and that are required are compliant with the regulations that are both, local, regional, national, and sometimes international regulations. And so we did this through a single platform, and you can see many of the things that we've automated now. Everything from core operations to legal to customer service, compliance. We have over 400 processes that we have automated for this bank, which has locations all over. And there are 23,000 users. And Jonty, one of the things that I saw in your stages, right, I think it was stage 5, is training and upskilling employees to use automation and AI. And so this bank, which has about 28,000 employees, almost all those employees, just 5,000, aren't using this tool. So 23,000 users using the tool. We were able to win the innovation award just for our early work with the bank. And of course, they're saving a fortune of money just doing some of this stuff in a non-manual way. But more important is the contribution that this is adding to their growth, right? They're able to just grow faster and without so many challenges because of what we've been able to automate. A different take on this, but one I just want to cover is a much smaller regional bank. If you can go to the next slide. So there's another smaller but regional financial institution serving businesses in a much smaller region in South America. And it's a similar story. They need to replace these legacy systems. They need to do things in a more efficient, but also speedy and customer-friendly way that's predictable without manual errors. And so they're using our solution to help them do that. It ensures compliance. It increases speed for the customer. It streamlines processes, and it also, when you roll these out, in a coordinated way, everyone kind of knows what is happening with the systems, with the process, and how it affects the customer, and what the individual's next steps are, as much as humans are involved. So another example, but a much smaller bank. And I think just to reiterate, one of the real rationales behind this merger is this desire to meet every customer where they are. Customers are starting that journey, as you said, Jonty, with high value but maybe lower risk use cases. And so we see a lot of customers that just want to start with a few automated processes, things that are being very, very manually done today, but we can automate very quickly tomorrow. And so this is an example where we've done that with a bank, and we have a lot of high expectations for the rest of the work that we can do with them. If you go to the next slide, I'll just say that if you look back at the last 12 months of work we've done in the product, and I'll just highlight a few of these things, the ones in purple, a lot of what we've done is prepare these different solutions for AI, prepare them so that the customer can use AI and so that they can help the customer deploy AI. So with version 9, for instance, in decisions, we kind of gave what I'll call a single pane of glass for everyone to design and to integrate everything just in one dashboard, or you see the design and the integrations all in one dashboard. We ensured that we can not only ingest third-party models, but that customers can use the tool itself. We have some open source ability to build your own localized models right inside the platform, and then have also added our own AI tools. So this Flow Genie, for instance, which just helps you build process flows like very easily through AI supported design process. If you look ahead in the next slide, it's all about actually deploying AI. So this first one, which I love the beaver icon, this first one is, how do we help you build agents inside our solution? It's an absolute 100% businesses using AI to really do stuff use case. And that's what you're able to do inside the decisions solution right now. And then likewise, that speed to value. And so we are kind of putting more of the capabilities that we see companies using over and over again. There's one for education that you see down there called Transfer Credits version 3. Like we see use cases across the verticals that I mentioned earlier, higher education being one of them. And we're just saying, we don't have to build these from scratch over and over again. Seems like this is an issue for every higher education organization out there. So let's build a solution that's mostly in a box, and then we can go out and configure it. So we're doing more and more of that across our verticals. And then the last one here is us using AI and having AI available on the platform to just more rapidly connect to any other system that you want through our AI data connector. So, Jonty, as I said, I hadn't heard your presentation before, but I think as I look at where we're going and how we're thinking about AI, it's that orchestration that's extremely valuable and really critical if you want to do AI at scale. And that's what we are all about in helping businesses do, really, as you look back at those examples, in a way where you can't make mistakes, right? And so ultimately getting to that auditability, that assurance, the governance, and then having a solution which gets you to a set of outcomes that are much more efficient, much more automated, much more smart because we're using AI, but also highly trusted.
Yep.
So thank you, Giles, and thank you, Jonty. It's just listening to both of you, it's kind of an exciting time to be in the space, to think as process orchestration evolves into agentic orchestration, and of course what decisions and process maker now bring into the space. So we're going to transition now into the fireside chat portion of today's conversation. I've seen some questions already come through. Giles and Jonty will incorporate those into their conversation, but I would encourage you as well, if you have additional questions, to please pop them in as we go. So with that, back to Jonty and Giles.
Thanks, Jed. So maybe I can go first, guys. So I'm really excited about to see what is unfolding with decisions plus process maker, right? But before we see something in picture, I just wanted to understand. Can you talk more about why was the decision made for the merger, right? What will you be able to do now that you weren't able to do earlier, right? What
Yeah.
would be the key markets that decisions plus, let's say, process maker will serve for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jonty. Well, look, there was a time, I mean, I think many of us remember this, where every business was going out there and they were trying to find a point solution for every single thing they did, right? And we see across IT and especially enterprise tools like ours, the desire for consolidation, for customers to be able to use one tool for lots of different things. And so that was a piece of it. And we have a saying kind of internally, which is we go from streamlining the simple, and think about that like approval workflows, to mastering the complex. And that is, real rule-based, real-time processing millions and millions of things using kind of enterprise-grade rule engines. And we're doing it through enabling AI workflow, process automation, and the orchestration across what are lots of business silos, especially with these legacy ERPs. And so we see that market demand for consolidation. We see that we can take two companies that are doing something very complementary and putting them together. But it's funny, even though we're doing quite different things, our perspective on how those things can be done by enabling AI, the core of workflow automation and orchestration is a consistent theme. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do with the merger, is create that future of business automation and orchestration.
Understood.
I think you also asked about where we're going to play. I mentioned some of the verticals that we are really strong in today: banking, insurance, higher education, manufacturing, healthcare. We have two of the headquarters are in Virginia and Raleigh, North Carolina, or Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, but also big offices in Latin America, an office in Africa, as well as Asia, and of course, supporting Europe and a lot of European clients as well. So we're going from all the way from the mid-market to the enterprise, 6 continents, and those core verticals I mentioned.
Understood. Thank you.
Jonty, I have a question for you. You ended with those 6 stages of adoption for agentic orchestration and automation. I'm curious to hear where you see businesses doing this well. Like, where are businesses in those stages, and what do you see them getting right or not doing right?
Yep. That's a great question, actually. And this one actually captures where the market is right now. So all I have to say is we have moved past the hype cycle. So most enterprises today are doing something with AI, right? But they are doing it in different ways. Now, if I have to categorize, I see three waves of adoption. So the first wave of adoption is AI being used to enhance the productivity. Now, think about copilots, document processing, summarization, insight extraction. These are more horizontal, quick win use cases, right? Delivering tangible ROI in different functions, maybe customer service, finance, HR. The second one is organizations are embedding AI into the business processes. So, for example, using predictive models to forecast, let's say, demand, optimize their supply chains, personalize some of their marketing campaigns. So this is where we are seeing the strongest value creation because AI is integrated, with the enterprise system and the decision workflows.
Mm.
And third, we are also starting to see AI applied in automation orchestrations. So, for example, enabling systems that can reason, that can plan, that can act across business processes. So this is the early stage of what we call agentic automation,
Mhm.
where AI agents dynamically coordinate outcomes rather than just performing tasks. So where companies are seeing success is where AI initiatives are tightly linked to some of the business outcomes. So for example, improving a specific KPI, for example, maybe their processing time, revenue conversion, compliance accuracy, things like that. Where we are still struggling is around scaling. I think I talked about that a bit, right? So it's about inconsistent data quality, fragmented tech stacks, lack of governance and things like that. And equally, talent and change management remains a big gap when we talk about technology. So success
Mhm.
today isn't about how advanced your model is. It's all about how well you have operationalized it. With this answer, I also have a question for you guys. So we talked about and I talked about a lot about automation, orchestration market, the evolution, and things like that, right? How have you seen the automation and orchestration market evolve, right? From it, especially from a perspective of your customers, when you talk to your entrants.
Yeah. Um, I really believe, and I think you've said this as clearly as me, that governance is going to be the thing that dictates how fast someone can move and how successful they are with AI. And everyone wants to do things with AI. What most businesses I think are doing now is kind of telling employees go use AI for stuff, go use AIs to make write your emails faster. It's more or less versions of that. Some folks are using it. Engineering groups are using it to help vibe code, but then you got to do strong QA on the code. So that's not really. To my three phases, that's kind of just using it to make that individual human more productive, and that's far from the real potential of AI and agents. At the same time, that the capabilities of AI are evolving faster than ever before. So this thing is becoming more and more capable, but we're only using it for these tiny little things. I think I saw a report that ChatGPT's #1 use was recipes. It was people finding recipes to cook. Like it's, man, we have this genie in a bottle, and we're just using it to give us recipes. So customers are struggling. I think in many ways they can't keep up with the capabilities. They don't want to. They want to use AI, but they don't want to just use it to write better emails. And so that's where a platform that can offer true governance capabilities is really needed, and that's what we're able to do in a way that I think really well follows those 6 stages that you illustrated. Of let's start with kind of core process automation, things that you shouldn't be doing the way you're doing today. And then let's inject AI at the right time with the right data and with the right follow-on steps. So that's why we're really excited about joining these two companies together. Process Maker is absolutely that easy place to start, and then with large enterprises, lots of data, that enterprise grade rule engine that we can deploy, supplemented by AI still, with the decision solution.
Yeah.
I got one more question for you, and then I saw a few in the chat, but just following on to what I just said, where would you suggest, and maybe you said it in the 6 phases, where would you suggest businesses start that AI journey?
Yep. That's a very common question we get from all the executives. And the good news is you don't need to start big, right? You need to, to make any meaningful progress. I think we discussed about the 6 stages of adoption, right? Just want to summarize that again. My first piece of advice would be start with purpose and not technology. Don't begin with what can AI do. Start with where do you need to make better decisions or faster outcomes, right? Identify those, 2 to 3 high value, low risk use cases where the business impact is clear, data is readily available, and you can get the ball moving. And I think on top of that, build your data foundation early. Most AI roadblocks trace back to poor data quality, fragmented systems, lack of context. Even small efforts to clean, structure, and label data go a long way in making AI very, very useful. And third is put governance in from day one. It's very tempting to think about ethics and oversight later, but transparency and accountability are what will differentiate responsible AI adopters from the rest. And finally, bring your people along the journey. Right? AI adoption isn't a technology change; it's an operating model shift. So the organizations who are seeing real success are those who are training their workforce to work with AI and not around it. And when I talk about AI governance, I just have one last question for you guys. Uh, I think you talked a lot about what will merger bring to the table, right? How do you plan to help your enterprise clients with the AI governance pillars? I think we talked about AI governance and then today. So what are the areas where you plan to help and are already helping some of your clients?
Yeah, let me I might answer a slightly different version of that question because I saw this one come up in the chat, which I think is probably on lots of people's mind, and that is, are decisions and process maker products being merged into one product? And what I'd say is that when we looked at what both these companies do, what we saw was something very complementary, not something that is ripe to just smash together. And so customer solutions are not changing today, but actually what we expect is that over time, we want to unite that user experience. So to answer your question, we want to give users and customers one way to interact with both sophisticated rule-based applications and designing of workflows. As we're building out our product roadmap, one of the things we're able to do is actually keep our product teams focused on those two things, right? That how do we have a product roadmap that really enhances that sophisticated enterprise grade rules-based work that we do with our customers, as well as faster design of processes, process automation and workflows. So the customer is going to have access ultimately to a much more complete and broad set of solutions. We're benefited by more expertise in the business, more professional services across more time zones, more support. And so again, I think a lot of what we saw was these are very complementary, especially as it comes to helping customers access AI or do more simple things that they couldn't have done before, and also just more time zones and geographies.
So Thank you, Giles and Jonty. We are just at time, so I will come back to simply say thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you to all the questions. There are some questions that we haven't had a chance to get back to, or at least to incorporate now. We will respond to you directly to answer those. And then in conclusion, perhaps I will simply leave you with this slide, which is again a thank you. And if you would like to learn more about anything you heard today, particularly around the agentic process orchestration and workflow automation, you can reach us at sales@decisions.com. And with that, in behalf of all of us, thank you for attending today.
Thanks, everyone. Great conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jonty.
Bye.